Your typing is incredibly noisy, Anne.
Oh, sorry. I'll turn off the mic.
Okay.
Nancy, do I just go at 6 o'clock as we're all very live?
Yes, I'm just checking that I don't think we're quite quorate yet. So as long as we've got 5 councillors that have come along by then. Yeah.
Who else have we got in the room?
Hello, Anne.
Hi, Steve. Could you
Nancy.
turn your camera off, please?
Yeah, I will do. Just let you know I'm here.
And I'm here as the parish councillor, not as a city councillor, so.
3, 4, 5. Yeah, that brings us up to 5.
City councillors, does it? No.
Just
do we need
check? It's 5 voting, isn't it? Representatives. So yeah.
So we've
Yes,
got
I'm a voting
one
rep.
more.
Are you happy for me to go at 6 then, Nancy?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Do you want to turn your video off, Nancy? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 15th of March. I'm Councillor Anne Weir, Chair of the Forum, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. The meeting is being held virtually and in accordance with the Council's rules for virtual meetings. Councillors are reminded that although the meeting is being held remotely, they're regarded as being present in a meeting of the Council and they should observe the normal rules of behaviour. First of all, please can I ask everyone present in this virtual meeting to keep your microphones muted and your camera turned off while you're not addressing the meeting, as this will reduce background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. Can members ensure their mobile phones are now switched off or on silent? Please can I also advise that the meeting is being video recorded and live streamed from the Council's website. In addition, this video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please indicate that you wish to speak or raise a point of order or explanation by raising your hand using the hand icon on your screen. Could the gentleman who's just joined us on the nice bridge switch his camera off, please? Thank you. So raise your hand using the hand icon on your screen, and I will invite you to then speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn. Therefore, I encourage all members to keep contributions as clear and concise as possible, please. Finally, if members wish to leave the meeting at any point, could they please make themselves known to me by raising their hand, again, using the hand icon. I'll announce to the meeting that you're leaving the meeting. Can I ask the Democratic Services Officer to undertake a roll call of members of the committee to confirm who's present in the meeting this evening? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in addition to yourself, we have Councillor Cremoisen. So if I could just ask you to turn on your camera and just confirm that you are present, please.
I am here.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
I'm also here.
Thank you. Councillor Godfrey. Okay, I will come back to Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Horrell.
Good evening, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Lerney.
Good evening, I'm present.
Hello, thank you. And Councillor Prince. No, but I think I just saw that Councillor Godfrey had just joined the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry for my delay. I'm now here and present.
Thank you. From the County Council, we have Councillor Todd.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Warwick.
Yes, Nancy, hi, I'm here this evening. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. And I know that we have apologies from Headbourne Worthy Parish for Councillor Idale, and I believe that Councillor Rutter is standing in.
Yes, I'm here present. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I just double check for Councillor Prince, I don't believe he is here, but with the exception of Councillor Prince, everybody else is present. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we confirm officers who are here this evening, Nancy?
Yes, thank you. From Winchester Council, we have Dawn Adey and Julie Pinnock. And from the County Council, we have Jonathan Woods.
Great. And I think I saw Mr. Hill joined us. Have we got Mr. Curry as well?
I believe I saw Mr. Curry was there as well from Carla Holmes, yes.
Yeah. And I think we're expecting Mike Slynn from the Residents Association. Is Mike with us? Sorry,
He isn't as yet, no, but we are expecting him, yes, Chair.
Okay. And then Councillor Porter is here as a visiting councillor, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm managing several devices at the moment. So have we got any apologies this evening other than from Councillor Iredale?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, so move on to item 2, which is disclosures of interest. Do I have any disclosures of interest? If you could pop your hands up if you want to. Okay, well, I will make my usual disclosure of interest. I'm a trustee of the University of Winchester Academy Trust, which the Barton Farm Academy is one of our participating schools. But it's a non-pecuniary interest. I see no other hands up on the disclosures of interest, so move on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting on the 18th of January. Can we take those and sign them as correct?
Agreed.
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 Right.
Agreed.
So moving on to item 4, public participation. The first to call would be the Kings Barton Residents Association. I think we were expecting Mr. Slynn. He's not here at the moment. So I will move on. I don't believe we have any other members of the public with us this evening, unless I'm mistaken. Yeah. Okay. And I have Councillor Porter as visiting councillor. Did you have any comments on items 5 and 6 on the agenda, Councillor Porter?
No, thank you. I will leave it for the moment. All I can say, though, is that I've been disappointed that the path from the 1A to the main school looks great from the school end, but it's not joined up at the other end. So I think that's something I'd like it to be explored tonight, because I thought we were promised that would be open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as we have no other members of the public this evening, I'll move on to item 5, which is the Ridgeway footpath. And I think, Mr. Woods, are you going to introduce or make some initial comments on this for us, please?
That's certainly my intention. So what I will do is I will share my screen with you. So I think what I've found with these routes is that it's quite important to ensure that we are all talking about the same thing. I think because there is a certain amount of confusion that sometimes occurs. So just bear with me. Right. So what I've just dropped on the screen here is a map of the area that we're talking about, and in particular we've got the school which is being constructed in this area, and this footpath here, which is the one that I've been working on with colleagues, which for the sake of clarity is Head Bournemouth footpath 1. So without over elongating a conversation, we were made aware of this path and its implications and the issues associated with the school at some point in last year, when I think things started to get very busy and very muddy. I know there's history to this path, and before we get into it, I suppose it's worth saying that from what I understand, when this area was going through planning, there was a lot of discussion, and there was discussions about the surfacing of this path. As I understand it, it then went off to Planning Inspectorate under appeal, and when it came back out of that, there wasn't any money identified for this path. As a consequence, it sort of rumbled on with people saying it's not very satisfactory, but not really raising its head above the parapet until we've had communication from Councillor Porter, actually, about the quality of the path and around how it could be resolved, with the impression that there was a SIL community infrastructure levy bid that had money secured for it. With a little bit of investigation, we discovered that there was no SIL money identified for it. There was a certain amount of scratching of heads about, well, how's this going to get paid for? Very pleased to say that our colleagues in Highways have identified the funding to underwrite the costs of surfacing this, because it is a let's call it a countryside path, although it has to be said its nature is changing. My team are delivering rather than Highways. We have a really small team. We've got a couple of project officers who work across the county, and they've just opened the new visitor centre down at River Hamble Country Park. Can you imagine the work that went into that? That was opened a week ago. So they have put the work out to tender. So the work went out to tender by the 11th of March. We're expecting returns back on the 8th of April, awarding on the 13th, and with contractors starting on the 25th, complete by the 31st of May. That's where we're at, I suppose, at the moment. The surface won't be a tarmac surface. It will be a self-binding stone surface. That will link with the new path, which I haven't seen, but I understand is being created going north-south up the side of the school. But it will be linking to that path and therefore providing a much better surface for people to walk to and from school. But that won't be in place before the end of May.
That's so thank you, Mr. Woods. That's very helpful, and it's reassuring to know that that's coming in the next couple of months. I guess there is a question then, if we're working on that over that period, some of that will be across the Easter holidays, which is a good thing, but we will be into the summer term, I think, while they're still working on it. I guess it's not particularly your problem as you're part of the countryside team. It's how are we going to get families who walk to school, some of whom I know don't have any transport of their own, around that area. Is there any discussion on how we can route people past the area while it's being worked on?
Not that I'm aware of, I fear. And certainly I am reassured that things are moving in the right direction with this estate and with connectivity with the with east-west connectivity and works to the road going underneath the railway line, creation of shortcuts in that area so we don't have huge loops and things. But I am not aware. I'm afraid I can't answer that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Slynn, you've popped up on our screens. Have you been listening to this conversation, or shall I come back to you in a little while? We missed you at the beginning.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's taken me 15 minutes to get logged in. I don't know why. I don't really use Teams unless it's strictly necessary, and it wouldn't let me in. So I'm with you now, only just this moment.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Could you switch your monitor off, please, so we can finish our conversation with Mr. Woods? Yeah. I'll carry on. Okay, colleagues, do we have any questions for Mr. Woods? I could carry on. Can I take any questions from anybody else while we're here? I'm not seeing any hands going up. I have got one. Councillor Warwick.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Woods, I missed the part of that you were talking about funding. Did you say there was or there wasn't SIL funding?
So at the moment, as I understand it, there is not SIL funding. SIL funding is held by Winchester City. They are open to an application being received, which is what we're working on. I suspect there'll be some. We're going to be getting on with this work now, so there might be issues with us delivering the work before we get awarded SIL funding, which is what I'm half expecting someone to say at some point. But we're going down that line of ensuring there is an application submitted to try and pay for the expenditure that the County Council's putting in. But the County Council's putting in that money now, so it can happen.
And can I just, sorry, Chair, can I just ask how much approximately we are, or Hampshire? I'm speaking as a Hampshire
County 50,000.
Okay, thank you so much. No, thank you, Chairman.
What I would say, Councillor Weir, your question regarding wider access, I'll raise that with Sarah Lee and with her colleagues and come back to you and ask them to come back directly to this group with a response to that question.
That would be greatly appreciated, and I'm sure Councillor Porter and Councillor Warwick would both welcome follow up on that. I mean, we're really keen to get this sort in this term, and it's good that it's moving ahead in the short term. And I'm sure my colleagues will do everything that they can to support the SIL application. The Winchester City Council team. Now, I've still got a hand up. Was that Councillor Warwick's old hand, or is that a new hand I can see?
Myself and Councillor Cramoyce, and I believe Councillor Weir.
Fire away, Councillor Rutter.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Woods. That's very helpful. I know the residents of Kings Barton will be pleased, but it's all very late, but I'm very pleased that it's been finally caught up with. I have to say, it's astonishing to think that whilst those of us on the ground who live nearby, we're discussing the Ridge Path as a key walking and cycling, indeed, route across the new estate for years, it doesn't seem to have actually materialised in any actual plans. So that's pretty horrific. I wonder what else is also expected by us and not actually going to be delivered. Is it possible for you to talk, or is it possible for the Carla representative who's here to say that alternative routes for walkers will be found whilst the work is being done, so that the children can still access the school without having to go all the way down Manley Road or something else completely impossible? Thank you.
Just so I can finish my point and just reiterate it, I cannot, because all I am directly involved with is the legal right to pass and repass on that one line. So it is for those who are involved in the surrounding landscape to comment on what might be possible.
I think that's fair enough. Mr. Hill, is there any view from Carla on the wider context of the Ridge Line and where that's going longer term? Oh, and Mr. Curry, sorry, I hadn't. It might be more your
the usual double act from myself and Ian. Ian, chip in as well. There's been a very clear plan from the outset on what the wider connectivity is around Kings Barton. That's been inherited through the design code, so that there is certainly plans which have been in wider public circulation for a long time now on wider pedestrian connectivity through the scheme and around the scheme. In terms of, I mean, this is, I don't know the width of the proposed path, but ultimately the Ridge Line is quite a wide piece of infrastructure, green infrastructure from Andover Road to the school, and again, I suppose it would be up to Hampshire's contractors to allow. My only thought process on this is that this path is unlikely to be more than about 2 or 3 metres wide. So would it be possible for them to continue the work and allow pedestrians to still use that, what is quite a wide piece of green infrastructure, through to the school? But that's the only comment I think I can probably make at this stage.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Curry.
I think trying to get alternative routes across a building site whilst work's going on this footpath is going to be challenging. Obviously health and safety is critical, and trying to cordon off areas just for a temporary time. Happy to look at it, whilst these works are going on, but for that ridge footpath. But at this stage, I can't promise anything, because it's just a logistic issue, because we've got a building site right next door, and then to cause people to walk in areas that haven't then been made safe for a footpath is, potentially an accident waiting to happen. So it can be quite challenging. I think Jonathan wants to say something, I think.
If I may, Councillor Weir, I think the question, if I interpreted the question correctly, is twofold. One of which is, during the course of the works, which is about a fortnight, will people be able to get down there? And I think there will be sufficient room. What you've got to remember is, like anything, we're using mechanical equipment. We'll be getting them to avoid the school walking to and from times. which is what we can do. But there should be sufficient width to one side to cordon off a path along part of the width. You're correct, Viv. I think the main question, is between now and when we start work and the condition of the footpath. And, the school children and parents using the path as it's got now, which is exceedingly wet, I think. Can I just ask, because it's been, to be honest, it's been a couple of months since I had a look at the path. The field to the north, is that still in agriculture? Has that started to be developed now?
The situation is it is still cultivated, but there is actually sort of double path. There's an informal path that goes to the north of the vegetation up to the where the Winchester Avenue crosses over. So in theory, people could walk to the north of the vegetation, which is the informal path. The only area where it narrows really and is quite difficult is where it crosses over the Winchester Avenue. And there is also another informal path going north of vegetation beyond Winchester Avenue. So it's the bottleneck we need to be really careful about and how we manage that if children are going to school, I think. I'd also say it would be really helpful to have some notification up at the entrance to the path from Andover Road well in advance to signal to people that this is coming and the timetable. Once we're absolutely sure of the timetable, if we could put some clear notices up there, I think that would be appreciated as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I hope that's helpful and thank you for your input. But I think, it's it will be greatty appreciated. Steve, Mr. Councillor Cremoyson, your hand is up, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question firstly for Mr. Woods, and then I've got a possible question for Mr. Hill and Ian. And Mr. Curry. So firstly for Mr. Woods, oh gosh, we've got an echo there, Mike. Your mic.
Mr. Sling, turn your mic off.
That's better. The way you phrased the SIL funding suggested a little bit of doubt as to where the money's going to come from. So I'm really pleased that your team are ploughing ahead regardless. So I just want to establish really where should the money be coming from? Should it be coming from Winchester City Council SIL or should it be coming from HCC funds? Just so that we're really just crystal clear on that. And then those of us who may have some influence can just make sure that we lobby and get it sorted. Can you clarify that? You're on mute at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. In theory, this should come through Section 106 and essentially be an allocated contribution from the development. That's where this should have been discussed, arranged and confirmed. In practice, that wasn't achieved. The logical next bit is SIL, because when the development occurred, external works linked with can be funded through SIL. It's one of the purposes that the money is gathered for, although it is an open bidding process. And I think, I don't work in a local authority. I used to work in a unitary council, but it's very much depends what's been applied for at that point in time as to whether or not one scheme gets funding over another scheme. So that is my element of doubt. It isn't actually my budget; it's my colleagues over in Highways which have given us the money to do this. So part of me could say, well, they've got loads of money, so they won't miss it. But I think the point is that we've stepped up and we're making it happen. But actually, I think if we could recoup that money from SIL, which is where it should come from, because that's developer contributions, then I think that's the right place for it to come from.
Yeah, and as a relatively new councillor, you didn't say specifically which authority, but I'm assuming what by inference that you mean Winchester City Council SIL, or potentially
Yes.
Parish Council SIL, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we would be applying to Winchester City.
Okay. I'm going to assume that other colleagues on here who know much more about this than me will object if they think there's a need to object to that. But I'll just come back to my other question then, which was for Ian and Viv, which is related to the potential footpath, which I think is on the plan from 1A, from the 1A phase 1A up to 1B, where you've got an almost made up path coming down from the Ridgeway, almost to where you could link into 1A. And I cycled down there yesterday, and I ended up having to go all the way around the Suds, which wasn't great fun, but just to see where we were. And it just struck me as we are just close, it feels so close to being able to link that up. And I appreciate what you were saying earlier, Ian, about, health and safety, totally agree with you on that. But, is it remotely possible to get that link open sometime over the next month?
Yes, I believe it is. That's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to make the route safe. We've ordered some Harris fencing to put on timber posts rather than on feet to make it more stable. And the idea is that to avoid the trek around the Suds Pond, to actually go through to the south of the Suds Pond. So to a bit of a shortcut there. So yes, that's what we're planning to do. Probably in the next month to 6 weeks. I think by the time we got all the posts in and the Harris fencing up. So yes, that's definitely the plan.
Right. So it would be a close run thing as to whether it's done in time to provide the school route from 1A up to 1B, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Cromoyson. I have another hand up. Mr. Slynn, I will take a contribution for you. Did you have a question on this particular item, or a contribution you wanted to make on this item? You are muted, Mr. Slynn. I can't hear you. You're still muted. In the meantime, I'm going to take contributions from Councillor Todd and then Councillor Lerney. We'll come back to you, Mr. Slynn.
Thank you. Yes, just an observation as somebody who's seen SIL from two places. So Hampshire is not a SIL collecting authority, but in the early days of SIL, it was paid an amount by Winchester, and I believe that it is a question to check whether some of that SIL pot still exists and is available for spending.
1 minute. So, Mr. Slynn, Mr. Slynn, can you mute both of you? Sorry. Yeah. Continue, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, so there are two pots, although Winchester is the only SIL collection authority, and there is a bidding process which obviously can't be prejudged because of its nature. There is also, I believe, or there was certainly at one point, and I don't think it's all been spent, a SIL pot of money that was paid by Winchester to Hampshire for infrastructure in the Winchester district. So that might be another source of funds to look at. I had a question that relates to Hampshire policy, which is there is now what's called the Hampshire Road User Utility Framework in the local transport plan that basically says pedestrians are higher in the utility framework than car drivers. If this was a road, we would have diversion routes in place. We would have it all planned out. We would have the network planned out. And I suppose my request, and I think we seem to be moving there, is it possible for a conversation to happen to give us a joined up plan? Is it possible to ensure that there is good access from 1A and 1B to the school, and that the work starts, that is timed to fit in with the availability of those routes? And then is it also possible, because I recognise that not all the school pupils are coming from Kings Barton, I believe, I'm sure some are coming from both east and west, that we have either a route or a pedestrian diversion route available? And there was the talk of this northern route, but can we have the conversations happen between Carla and Hampshire to ensure that every stage of the process, from whichever calendar point people are coming to the school, there is a route in place, and that we manage things and we manage diversions onto, even if it's onto informal paths on Carla land, to ensure that that's possible?
So
I think that's sort of what I've been hearing from the other questions from other people, but I'd just like confirmation, and if there could be some coordination, it would be good.
Mr. Woods.
I can come back to what I was saying about Sarah Lee and the team involved around the school. They seem to be quite involved in discussions and are looking at a plan. It's a bit peculiar because even though we're a countryside service, I do lead the planning team, the planning unit in the countryside service, and I must admit this planning application's been around for a little while, and I think we would normally have seen a sort of access and movement strategy developed and a sort of phased plan to how that would be delivered through a development, which as far as I'm aware, and I'll quite happily be contradicted by people who know better than I on this one, that doesn't seem to be a place at the moment. So I think if there needs to be discussions to draw together a plan, so it's clear what's going to happen and when, I will try and encourage the county council to take part in that and engage with Carla Holmes and any other relevant body to try and make sure that occurs. I can't commit to it because it probably won't be the countryside service leading on that. Hope you can appreciate that.
Thank you. I think that contribution is greatly appreciated. Yeah, and noted to be picked up. And perhaps Mrs. Adey, who's with us on behalf of City Council, might also be able to note that, because I think it's something we ought to come back to. Thank you. Okay. Oh, Mr. Hill.
Just in answer to Jonathan's question there, really, that I know there have been, and I have been the author of a number of drawings over the last 6 months, 18 months, 2 years potentially, which have been shared with Hampshire, and I appreciate there's lots of different departments here, so we may not have all seen the drawings that we're all asking to see, but there are a set of drawings in that have been circulated, which show a phased delivery of connectivity between the phases, the phased delivery of connectivity across the wider site, and how it links to the public right of way, how it links to Barton Meadows, and how it links to our Section 106 trigger. So I'm sure that's plans we could share with the wider team at a point in time, and I think we may have even shared these at previous forums, but I might stand to be corrected on that one. But certainly that we do have a phased connectivity plans, a set of plans which are in place, and obviously it's linked to the ability to unlock certain construction sites and connect through to the public right of way primarily.
That's helpful. Okay, Councillor Todd, you wanted to come back on that?
Yeah, I suppose the question for me would be a bit like that. There's kind of two phases of this. So I think what we've seen is what you might call the long-term strategic route development. And I think what I'm asking for is almost the short-term as we implement things, making sure it's still joined up, making sure that during the construction process we're managing diversions and other such things. So we need both, I think, is the answer. You know, it's a bit like the difference between this is our plan for the rebuilding of Junction 9 on the M3, and this is our detailed program of closures and diversions in order to make sure that the traffic keeps flowing in the meantime. And I think it's the latter that would be really helpful if Carla and Hampshire in particular could coordinate in order to ensure that that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, because I think we know we can control the diversion of any route, any new route that we're proposing through the site in and around our construction activity. What we can't influence is the diversion of a public right of way. And I think you're right, that's where Hampshire would probably take a greater lead than we would in terms of our ability to unlock the connectivity across the site.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Todd. Mr. Slynn, if you're able to unmute yourself, I take a question now, but no. Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Lurney now.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I know that Mr. Slynn is trying to join via another email account. It might be helpful if he possibly leaves the meeting on the original email account, which he can't unmute on, and then I can let him in on the new email account, and we can maybe hope that will work.
Okay. So, Councillor Lurney.
Hi, thank you, Chair. And I think my big concern about this is that it's great that we're actually finally moving ahead and getting the path in, but I certainly believe that as soon as we get this path in, we'll be facing demands to make it an all-weather path. I mean, this is what effectively is a potential cycle and pedestrian superhighway, both from Week and Hairstock into town and into Headbourne Worthy and beyond. I'd like to know what we're going to do when that pressure starts coming. It's also that unless it's an all-weather path, then we will find that the parents with pushchairs and children on scooters will find it quite tricky to navigate, over time as it starts wearing away. I get really worried about the maintenance regimes on these heavily used paths, because there is a tendency to put them in, but without the money to look after them in the long run. So what are we going to do to make sure that this path stays in really good condition?
Mr. Woods.
Okay, I'm dragged into all sorts of questions here. I think you're entirely right. And in the future, at some point, the top dressing, which we're going to be putting on over the next few months, will need to be taken off, and it will be replaced with a tarmac surface. The sub base that we're putting in can be used throughout both. What I would say is the cost of tarmac is very expensive at the moment. I'm doing elsewhere in the county, I'm doing approximately 200 yards of it, similar width, and it's costing me near £100,000. So this is a lot shorter. Costs have just peaked at the moment, so it may be cheaper in a little while, but I was quite stunned to receive that cost on a section of path down in the south of the county. The reason why we're doing it as we are is that we don't put in blacktop paths as a countryside service. Neither do we maintain them. And there is a discussion to be had with the county council around the maintenance of blacktopped routes in the future, if that's what occurs. Around how that gets funded. Normally, in a normal situation that we work with, it's actively agreed through the planning permission what standard paths are going to be created to, and who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of those paths, and what contribution is sought from the developer to ensure that that maintenance is continued in perpetuity. We're not in that situation with this path. So I do understand your concerns, and actually it's quite obvious in many ways that it might end up having the top dressing changed at some point in the future. What we're doing at the moment is reacting to the immediate issue with total acceptance, and I think both councils will have to have discussions going forward about what the future of that path is and when it's programmed to improve its surface. It might be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be.
Thank you.
No,
I appreciate that doesn't really answer your question, but no. I do understand where you're coming from.
No, I think I'm just pleased to hear that actually there's an acceptance that we're likely to have to move in that direction in the future, and that it's going to be designed such that it won't be too difficult.
If I can continue that point, Councillor Weir, just a little bit. Yep. I've just been sat all morning with a lovely lady from Cycle England, as well as other colleagues, who's Winchester based, and we get the same pushback a lot on our sort of more rural cycle links, cutting through farmland in order to get to things, from Cycle England. And you know, the fact of the matter is, and I say the same thing, but there's a character to these routes, and I think as the development changes, obviously the nature and character of the public footpath becomes a more urban footway, or cycleway. But it's about level of use, and what we might find, this is a link to a school, so I appreciate the level of use is only going to increase, I suspect, along with the size of the development. But sometimes what we find is those surfaces are perfectly adequate. It's all about water and drainage in many ways. Water, drainage, light and air, and wind to dry up the surface. So they're very different to a sort of tarmac maintenance type setup. But you know, the level of use this is likely to get linking to the school, it's going to be an interesting one, I think. My gut feeling.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the thought that you've put into this. So I've now lost Mr. Slynn completely. I don't see any further hands on this point.
Chair, I think Mr. Slynn might have left and then rejoins. It might be worth whether he's able to contribute again.
Okay, right. I can't see him. Oh, yes, I can. He is there. Mr. Slynn, you appear to be with us. Would you like to ask a question?
Right, sorry, I think multiple problems getting into Teams and had to log off completely, shut down and start again. Seem to have managed to get in. I think you've already discussed the footway. Obviously, that's a matter of major concern. You would have seen also the notes of the meeting that we had with Carla Holmes. I hope they were satisfactory for everybody. Yeah, I just had a few questions. One was, we're keen to find out when we will get a community development officer working with us again.
Okay.
Now that Chris Hughes has departed.
Mr. Slynn, could I just hold you there? I'll just finish this item off. We're on item 5, and then I'll come back to your other questions if you don't mind. If we could just wrap this up, and then I'll come back to your wider points arising from the meeting. Okay. So I don't see any further hands up on this. Can I just ask if there's any debate on this question of the path to the school along the ridgeline from members of the committee? I'm not seeing any hands here. I think we've explored some really useful points. Yeah, I'm now seeing a hand. I'm almost certain that will be Councillor Horrell. Yes, welcome, Councillor Horrell. Fire away.
Chair, thank you. And I think
the source of funding, and we're grateful for the commitment already made by the Hampshire team. But can I suggest that we take it as an action upon ourselves to ensure that we, as the City Council members on this committee, ensure that we address the financing via SIL or whichever means is deemed appropriate, that we all commit to ensuring that that is on the appropriate agenda as soon as possible, so that can be clarified for everyone's benefit, and that we take that as a particular action.
It was the very point I was going to make, but thank you for making it. We'll get that into the notes there.
Thank you.
Yes. Mrs. Pinnock, I see your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to reassure members that we have sent the appropriate application paperwork to Hampshire County Council to make the SIL application, and it really is with them to make that application to us. And I think, as one of the councillors said earlier, there is then a bidding process, and it will be a member decision as to where our SIL funding is spent. And I certainly know that the office is involved in that, and some of the panel are aware of this sort of imminent application, but we haven't received it yet, Chair, so we can't action it in terms of our SIL colleagues. But they were certainly aware of the 50,000 mark figure and have sent the forms and are waiting for them.
Thank you very much. And so I note again Councillor Horrell's point that yes, the members, City Council members, should keep abreast of that. I think there were some useful points made by Mr. Hill about the phased delivery of connectivity, and that we might wish to put that on future agendas to keep revisiting and ensure that the forum is keeping up to speed with those plans of phased delivery as requested by Councillor Todd. So I think it would be useful to revisit that at future meetings, and in particular that connection between phase 1A and phase and the ridge line would be useful there. Apart from that, I think the following the money and looking at the future phasing were critical issues coming out of this, and clearly longer term there is further work needed on the development of the ridge line and the sort of role that it's going to play, what the status of it. But I think we appreciated Mr. Wood's comments, particularly about the changing nature of that route, and that it will be informed by levels of use. So personally, I feel that was a very useful discussion. I'm grateful for everybody who took part in it today. And thank you, Mr. Woods, for being with us. Did you want to make any concluding?
No, I was just going to thank you for your time and say I've got a few actions that I'll go back and look at with the schools team, and I was going to peel away if that was okay.
You're most welcome, and thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay. So before we go on to item 6, I'm going to go back to Mr. Slynn on public participation. Would you like to raise your points now? I'm sorry I cut you off earlier, but I just felt it was useful to finish that item.
Thank you for your bearance, Chair. I hope you can hear me. I can't.
I can.
I seem to be able to switch my camera on. It doesn't seem to work. Never mind. So you talked about the footway. No doubt we'll hear in the future when and if we're getting a footway properly surfaced or not. The other points I was making were that we submitted the notes of our meeting with Carla Holmes, and I hope that's satisfactory. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. We were particularly concerned, moving on to another point, about when we might get a community development officer now that Chris Hughes has resigned. So some information on that would be welcome. Also, we note that in the travel plan, the number 86A bus service should have been in place by now, and we're wondering when we're going to get a 30-minute frequency service on Andover Road for current residents. Perhaps somebody could answer that question for us. And finally, the waste recycling centre proposal. I think everybody knows about the waste recycling centre at 3 Maids Hill. For resident association, we're particularly concerned about heavy goods vehicle movements coming through the development, and we'd like to know what action you'd be able to take on our behalf to prevent that happening if the development was approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Can I take the first question? Mrs. Pinnock, do you have anything to say about the Community Development Officer?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to say that we have that job out to advert at the moment. So we have worked with Carla to agree the replacement of Chris Hughes for another 2-year period, which Carla will fund. And that would be both, it would be a joint role to fulfil both the planning sort of implementation role and also the community worker role, which I think is really important. And that forms an integral part of the job we're advertising.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that's good news. Obviously, that will take as long as it takes, but I'm sure that we're moving as quickly as possible on that. I'm going to just move through these points. I see, Councillor Rutter, you have your hand up. If I could just move through Mr. Slynn's points and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Rutter. On the travel plan, the 86A bus service, I'm not sure whether there's anybody here who can address that question. I'm not seeing anybody jumping in on the 86A. I think, oh, Mrs. Pinnock?
Sorry, I'm not going to be able to jump in and answer the question, I'm afraid. But when I was inviting Jonathan Woods to this meeting on your behalf, I did have some correspondence with the Sarah Lees that he mentioned, but also Gemma Bowery. And I think Gemma would be willing to come to a future meeting and discuss some of those trigger points on the travel plan.
Thank you.
That would be helpful.
We'll note that and perhaps we can pick that up for the next meeting then. Thank you very much.
Chair, I believe Councillor Porter has some information about the bus service.
Okay. Councillor Porter.
We're not sure if I'm allowed to speak, but I'm just going to say that Rachel Hartley and Emily Payne have been working on a service, and I believe they've tendered for a taxi bus service, which I also believe is due to start in the very near future. And Carla have been having conversations about bus stops, so may be able to advise you.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing either Mr. Curry or Mr. Hill jumping in here, so I'm assuming that
maybe somebody else in their team.
Yeah. Okay. I suggest we put that on the next agenda so that people can come prepared for that discussion. Okay. And then we have the question about the waste recycling centre at 3 Maids Hill. Mrs. Adey or Mrs. Pinnock, is there anything that we can comment on that at this stage? Again, I don't think we've come prepared to deal with that question this evening. Is it something we could come back to at a future meeting? Dawn.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to reiterate what you've just said, I haven't prepared for that this evening. If we could bring that back, please.
Yeah, we'll put it on the
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay. Okay, Councillor Rutter, your hand has been patiently raised.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask a question on the notes from the Residents Association meeting with Carla Holmes?
Okay.
Just from the point of view of the parish council, I know that the parish council is very concerned to be involved at the earliest possible stage with discussion about facilities for residents, muggers, play areas, and so on, and what they're made up of, you know, what sort of things are included, and particularly the neighbourhood centre, the community centre that's going to be built. But we still have we seem to be bypassed as the parish council in all these discussions, and we're terribly concerned that at some stage in the future we will be responsible for managing many of these items which we had absolutely no input in at an early enough stage to actually influence them. And there are various issues that do concern the parish council about the play areas and the equipment that's in them and so on and so forth. So can I just plea that make a plea that the parish council be involved at an early enough stage so that our contribution can have some effect on decisions made at a stage before it becomes far too expensive to take any notice of what we're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutter. Can I suggest that that might be something to put on the work list for the new community development officer when said person is in place? Would that be appropriate, do you think, Mrs. Pinnock?
I certainly agree, Chair, and I think it's something we'll take away from this meeting and some other discussions about making sure. I think with this forum, sometimes perhaps not everyone is always here or they're not parting to various discussions, and I think that's something we need to ensure with the new person and taking on that community role as well as the planning role. We'll bring those things together and make sure that everyone is included in discussions. I think I would add, though, that, you know, of course, the Planning Permission sets out and specifies the design codes and some of the provision. But I think there's also that opportunity for engagement and about who may manage and maintain future areas.
Thank you. So I have Mr. Slynn, you wanted to come back in.
Thank you. No, I didn't. But I've not been able to cancel the hand or switch off.
We can help you there. So
right,
fine. All right, I have Councillor Todd next.
Just a minor point in reference to the contact with Peter Simmons. As a county councillor and a city councillor, I'm on the Peter Simmons Neighbours Liaison Group, and I'm very happy to put the Residents Association in touch with Dave Cartwright and his team to raise the question of parking, if that's at all helpful.
I'm sure that would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Horrell.
Chair, thank you. And it's prompted, my question is prompted from the report and the that was tabled that obviously Mr. Slynn and the others in the neighbourhood team have raised, and that is regarding sewerage issues that still continue to be a problem. And we know as we go into our local plan, infrastructure and the like are fundamental, and I'm slightly concerned that we still haven't resolved that. No one seems to understand why. Certainly a request made of the residents to advise and keep a diary log so that these can be noted. But as we continue to build out the development, I think it is a matter of concern if we haven't resolved this on these early stages, and just wanted to better understand what our action plan was over and above asking for residents just to note when they observed anything unpleasant as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Hill or Mr. Curry, did you have any sort of thoughts on the sewage question?
No, is the honest answer. I think we've asked for the resident because the smell is intermittent. That's the issue. It's not a constant issue, and we previously asked for residents to just provide a diary as to when they were smelling it. If it was a regular thing, it was once a day, 10 times a day. Is it from a particular manhole? Is it from is it only in the mornings? Is it only in the evenings? It could be an atmospheric thing. We've had a CCTV survey of all the sewers there, so we know they're clean. We know they're running. We know there's no how do I say it politely, stuff being left in the pipes, and so we know there's no debris there. So we are looking to liaise with Southern Water. We'd initially approached them. They were helpful, and we are going to approach them again to see if they can assist us in this. If the sewers are running clean, if you like, there is no reason why they should smell. So that's the thing. And I personally have smelt it. I know, and it's like an intermittent waft of about 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, and it dissipates. So we're struggling to understand what that can be. So what we've done near a number of residents, what we've done, we've sealed the manhole covers, and we know that is potentially pushing the smell in areas where there is no windows open that it will affect. And we're just seeing whether that's resolved the problem in the sense near where residents are based. But because it's intermittent, that's the problem. If it's a consistent thing, we think that there may be a blockage, or it was something to do with the pumping station over the other side of the ridge. But we don't believe that to be the case, because it doesn't smell when the pumping station's working. So that's the problem. And very happy for people to chip in if they've got any ideas. We're dealing with Southern Water on it, see if they can assist us, and we'll go from there. So the idea of getting residents to help us was to help us create a diary to understand a bit more, to inform us with our conversations with Southern Water to see if it can be resolved in that way. But it's not a health hazard. It's an inconvenience and I think probably it might dissipate with the more properties that are connected to the sewer. We're not sure, but I seem to recall in one of these meetings, perhaps a year ago when it was first discussed, or 9 months ago, that some councillor mentioned that on another development nearby, don't know what it was, where they initially had this this smell problem before too many homes were connected. Once there were more homes connected, the smell went away. So and that's why we're engaging with Southern Water on it.
Well, that's very helpful, Mr. Curry. Thank you. Those of us who live nearby perhaps we should all be contributing to the diary, because I've certainly noticed it myself when I'm walking past. Okay, I'm not seeing any further comments on this section. Going back to Mr. Slynn's initial remarks and the paper on the KBRA meetings. So I've just seen that Councillor Horrell is leaving. Thank you for your contributions. We'll move on to item 6 and now, the update on the community centre phase 2B. I'm hoping Mr. Hill and Mr. Curry would just give us a quick update on that, where we are. Thank you.
Apologies, sorry, I just missed. You'd like an update on what? Sorry.
Our item 6, Mr. Curry, is on the community centre, the phase 2B public engagements and consultation.
I shall leave that to my colleague, Mr. Hill, to respond to.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair. It's a very brief update from me this evening. We've in terms of where we are with the process and where we are with applications going forward on Kings Barton, we have just in a process of revalidating phase 3A, which is to the south of the ridgeline, adjacent to Winterbourne Meadows, and the 2B more recently approved application. So I think Winchester will no doubt be seeking consultation responses on that application over the coming few weeks. That is for 195 homes. That has now been resubmitted. That will be the next phase that we'll be taking forward. And then immediately into phase 2B, we're looking at a summer application for revised application for approximately 291 dwellings and all the mixed uses within the neighbourhood centre. So just to remind everyone, that includes the food store, public house, community centre, children's nursery, and affordable extra care apartments, and the associated ancillary supporting retail spaces that will sit alongside the food store. We're having a number of conversations with end users, and we need to really firm that up before we can finalised the plans and have been in a position to share those with the wider team. We're not there yet. As you can appreciate, it's a complicated beast, the neighbourhood centre. There's a lot of moving parts there. We've got to tie up commercial deals first, and we've got to continue to engage with Hampshire County Council on the design of the neighbourhood centre road, the appropriate crossing points, access and egress into those adjacent service parcels which we're providing. So it's all work that we're fully hands to the drawing board on at the moment, and we're anticipating a summer application, and that includes the community as well. I think I failed to mention the community and how that is delivered, how that's managed, who might deliver it, and all those conversations we're having with Julie's team at Winchester at present.
So do you anticipate any public engagement on that before you submit the application?
I think previously we had said that we would engage with the wider team, with wider stakeholders and wider public. I think that the limit of consultation, I think, is an interesting one, given the complex nature of what we're presenting. I think my own instinct was that it'd be more for information, given all the conversation we're having, that this is what we're proposing to resubmit. This is for information. Clearly, if there are fundamental concerns from anybody, we would by all means sit down and listen to the concerns. But there's a lot to pull together to get this application right, to create a sense of place, get the landscaping right, create a community, and that's what we're passionate about doing here. So the focus on us and the engagement with everyone involved is to really create a real special place at Kings Barton. That's what we're focused on doing.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a question. Councillor Rutter, I think she may have a question for you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Viv. Given that in due course it may well be either the parish council or the residents association or both, or a new community organisation that takes the place of both of us, nevertheless, that manages the community building, would it not be sensible to involve both the parish council and the residents association at an early stage in what exactly is provided in terms of the community building, whether it's just one big hall or whether it has meeting rooms, what are the facilities included, so that we can have some idea that what is going to be presented to us is going to be something that's functional and not something that we will have to budget £200,000 in due course to turn it into something it should have been in the first place. That would be really helpful if we can be included in the discussions at a stage when we can actually influence them. Thank you.
I can give you a very quick answer to that, and it may or may not help, but there was a few years ago now, there was one of our planning obligations and one of our planning conditions we had to discharge before we even got to first occupation across the wider site was a very clear strategy as how the community centre should be delivered. It had a very clear brief as to what should be in that building, a multifunctional larger space, ancillary supporting accommodation, facilities, kitchen, a reception area, a number of office rooms, 2 drop-in health rooms for potential GP surgeries to be able to use that during the week as well. So there has been a very clear brief, which is an approved document, which was put together. I think it would be sensible to share that again so that everyone can see what's coming forward. And there was some commentary in that about the ongoing management and maintenance. Take the point from Councillor Rutter about long-term management and maintenance. We're seeing it in other projects where we've delivered community centres where parish councils don't want to take on a facility of this size because of the running costs. And so I think that's where we need to keep our options open as to whether this could be something that Winchester take on, the parish council, or it might be a commercial entity that could take it on. So we are exploring all avenues and discussing this with the Winchester team in the first instance to see, and Steve Lincoln there, the community officer there at Winchester, to manage the process going forward.
That's helpful. Councillor Rutter.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just reiterate my plea that we be involved in those discussions at the earliest possible stage, and if there are plans, it would be lovely to see them. I don't remember ever seeing actual plans. I know we had discussions about it, but I don't ever remember seeing actual plans. So if they could be forwarded both to the Residents Association and to the Parish Council, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly share that report. That's no concerns there.
Thank you. And again, I think I would ask Dawn Adey and Julie Pinnock to ensure that from the City Council's perspective, if such discussions are ongoing, that the parish and the Residents Association are brought into any discussions from our side as well as from Carla's side. That I think that would be helpful. Does that make sense, Dawn? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for confirming that. Great. Again, have I got any further questions on the community, the neighbourhood centre development? I'm not seeing any at the moment. Is there any debate, final comments on this particular item? No. I'm not seeing any hands up on this either. If that's the case, then can I thank, one's gone up. Miss Councillor Cunningham.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Can you see me?
I can see you.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, my question is basically in regards to the closure of the Andover Road. The survey was completed.
We're not taking comments on that. It's not on the agenda this evening, Councillor Cunningham. We have an agenda item, and other people have asked for things to come onto this agenda. I'm not taking questions on that this evening. So thank you for putting your hand up, but we'll move on at that point. So if there are no further questions on items 5 or 6, I will call the meeting to a close. And I'm not seeing any. So thank you all for your time this evening. And we've got a number of items to take forward to the next meeting. And I wish you all every success with that. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair.
You just stop recording. Thank you.
Thank you very much.